What if a single sentence, spoken once every hour, could completely rewire how money moves into your life? This is not a motivational trick. This is a law, discovered, tested, and proven by one woman in the middle of the worst economic collapse in modern history. And today it is yours. Money is not random. It does not choose favorites. It responds to your voice, like a trained instrument obeying the hand that strikes it, every 60 minutes. There is a forgotten principle, deliberately buried, that turns each hour of your day into a lever of wealth. We are not here to entertain you. We are here to switch something on inside you. Something that has been sleeping. You work harder, sacrifice more, count every coin, pray and promise. And still, the flow slips away. You live as though an invisible force has decided, once and for all, that you will not prosper. The world has told you to push stronger, strain further. But the real cause of your lack lives somewhere else entirely. It lives in the phrases you whisper about yourself throughout the day. Say this, once every hour, and your reality shifts. That was the instruction they tried to erase. In 1925, Florence Scovel Shinn, a visionary teacher of spiritual science, showed ordinary people how to command their finances from the face of a clock. Every 60 minutes, in the heart of the Great Depression, when poverty was swallowing millions whole, her students learned to speak with divine authority. Debts dissolved, contracts appeared, incomes multiplied inside the chaos. It was not luck, it was law in motion. Today, neuroscience has dressed her intuition in respectable clothing, rhythmic repetition, focused attention, neuroplasticity. What you declare with identity, and in the present tense reshapes your neural circuits, shifts your perceptual filter, and rewrites what you notice, what you choose, and what you attract. Even popular water experiments gave us a striking image. Words imprint form. When that form is abundance, life reorganizes in its favor. Not everyone wanted this truth to spread. Certain circles preferred you to beg instead of decree, to wait instead of receive. That is why this teaching was whispered behind closed doors. Today, you reclaim it. Stay and subscribe now. In minutes you will receive the exact declaration, the micro-ritual of preparation, and the simple daily pattern that installs a new rhythm of prosperity from morning to night. Your voice sets the tempo, and the universe answers. Let us begin. Florence Scovel Shinn would remind her students that life does not transform in grand gestures. It transforms in small moments, repeated with authority. Every hour, she said, is a doorway. And what you declare on that threshold does not dissolve into the air. It descends into your reality like a seed pressed into fertile earth. For her, the word was not decoration. It was a precision instrument capable of redrawing the entire course of a day. Speak it automatically, and your voice plants weeds. Speak it with certainty, and your voice plants harvests. That was the radical edge of her teaching. The clock was not merely a measure of time. It was the metronome of the spirit. Every 60 minutes, a new beat where the word could reorder the world. Florence illustrated this with a metaphor her disciples never forgot. Your phrases are like drops of ink falling into clear water. One drop barely tints the surface. But repeat the fall, and soon the entire glass takes on color. This is how hourly declaration works. A word spoken once may pass unnoticed, but spoken rhythmically, it saturates the subconscious mind, tints the vibration of the body, and eventually colors external circumstance. In New York, deep in the 1930s, one of her most faithful students, a young shop assistant, arrived each week carrying the same complaints. I work too much and never get ahead. Everything disappears into expenses. Florence handed him a simple exercise. Every hour, when he glanced at the clock, he was to speak a phrase of authority aloud, with a firm voice. The first few days felt foolish, but he obeyed. And the remarkable thing was this: within a month, his employer began delegating greater responsibilities to him. Then came a referral to a better, paying position. And by the end of that same year, he received an offer of partnership in a small family business. Florence told him, it was not the clock that changed your life. It was the constancy of your voice. Every hour you opened the door and gave the right command. The spiritual principle behind this practice was clear to her. The human mind wanders. The heart grows weary. But hourly repetition keeps the channel to divine intelligence alive and open. It is like a drum that never stops beating on the battlefield, reminding the army that the order still stands. Your cells, your decisions, and even the people who cross your path begin aligning with that rhythm. Here is where most people fail. They speak an affirmation in the morning and wait for instant miracles. Then let the rest of the day fill with complaints, criticism, and phrases of defeat. Florence taught that this was like watering a field with pure water at dawn, then pouring poison over it for the rest of the day. No seed survives that kind of contradiction. Her instruction was therefore precise. The decree could not remain a morning ritual. It had to be repeated every 60 minutes. Each hour became a new contract signed with life itself. In this way, a person stopped being a victim of autopilot and became the commander of their reality. Setting the beat with their own word, Florence Scovel Shinn taught that it is not the isolated shout that opens the doors of destiny. It is the steady drop that pierces the stone. Repeating a phrase each hour can seem simple, almost naive, but it is precisely that constancy which dissolves the resistance that has been building walls inside you for years. She compared it to the work of a farmer. The farmer who waters his field once and then waits for a miraculous harvest will end up frustrated. The water evaporates. The soil dries. The seed dies before it can break through. But the one who, day after day without exception, moistens the earth, that farmer knows that even if he sees nothing on the surface, the root is growing in silence, until one day it breaks through with unstoppable force. This is how the hourly word works. A declaration repeated without rest penetrates layer after layer of the subconscious, until nothing can stop it from taking hold and bearing fruit. Florence would often say to her students, consistency breaks resistance. With that simple phrase she summarized an entire spiritual science. Old beliefs of lack, fear, and failure are like tight knots in the rope of your life. A single occasional affirmation can shift them slightly, but it is relentless repetition, drop by drop, that finally untees them. One of her disciples confessed that he had spent months repeating long affirmations every morning and still saw no results. Florence asked him to release the solemnity and practice the discipline of simplicity. Every hour, like marking the beat of a clock, declare with firmness that all good things now flow toward you. The student agreed. Within weeks he began noticing small changes, a delayed payment that finally arrived, an unexpected proposal, the feeling that he was no longer walking against the current. What had seemed immovable began to yield. Not through brute force, but through the constancy of the drop. The power of this method lies in a truth about the human mind: it forgets quickly. A decree spoken at dawn can be swept away by worries, news, and hollow conversation. But if every 60 minutes you remind your consciousness of its direction, you do not allow it to drift, like a ship that constantly adjusts its sails and reaches port, while another, corrected only once at the start, ends up adrift. Constancy does not mean rigidity, it means rhythm. Florence insisted that this exercise should never feel like a burden. It should feel like spiritual breathing. Just as you inhale and exhale without thinking, in the same way your voice must become a natural pulse that marks the direction of your life. By repeating the decree hour after hour, you become a conscious sower, watering your inner field with the water of certainty. Whoever truly understands this stops waiting for great miraculous efforts and begins trusting in the discipline of the small. Because the small, repeated with faith, is what ultimately becomes unstoppable. Florence Scovel Shinn did not invent this truth. What she did was rescue it and translate it into a language that ordinary people could use in their daily lives. She reminded her students that throughout history, the great spiritual archetypes had always understood the power of the word. It was not decoration. It was a weapon, a key, and a bridge. In her classes she would cite Moses, who, standing before an enslaved people, did not timidly request freedom. He spoke with the authority of one who knows the sea obeys the voice of the divine. When he raised his staff, he was not negotiating with the water. He was commanding a passage where none existed. She spoke of Daniel, cast into the lion's den. Daniel did not beg for his life in fear. He declared his faith with a certainty so unshakable that even the beasts became harmless. The word, in that moment, was like an invisible shield wrapping him in the darkness. And she spoke of David, a young man without armor who faced a giant that had paralyzed an entire army. While everyone else murmured their defeat, David proclaimed his victory aloud, before a single stone was thrown. His declaration preceded the event. His words struck the target before his sling even moved. Florence taught that these stories were not distant legends. They were symbolic portraits of what every human being can accomplish through the word. The Bible, in her view, is a coded manual showing how a voice charged with faith and conviction transforms reality more powerfully than any iron sword. And for those who preferred to move beyond biblical references, she opened a wider frame. Ancient Egyptians understood the power of Hika. Mantras were the beating heart of the Vedic tradition. The Greeks spoke of the Logos as the force that organizes the cosmos. Every culture, in its own way, agreed reality is not built with bricks first, it is built with words. Florence understood that modern humanity had forgotten this inheritance. That is why she repeated, "This is not new, it has always been this way." The sages knew it. What we call an affirmation today is simply the contemporary name for a power as ancient as life itself. The key was to reclaim that authority, to stop speaking as resigned victims and begin speaking as heirs of an eternal law. Just as Moses, Daniel, and David each had to choose, so does every person. Is your word a sigh of fear or a decree of power? Florence taught that the second option is not the privilege of a select few. It is the divine right of every soul. Florence Scovel Shinn warned that the human mind is not an infinite archive you can load with thousands of phrases and expect clear results. She said it is like a musical instrument. If it is tuned to too many notes at once, what it produces is noise. For the vibration to be effective, it needs a tuning fork, a single tone that sets the frequency, and that everything else then echoes. That is why she insisted there was no need to memorize 100 different affirmations or run through endless lists every day. What the mind needs is a single, clear code, a phrase that functions as a master key, one central declaration that, when repeated, acts as the tuning fork that brings every string of the inner instrument into alignment. Repetition, she taught, is not hollow mechanical echo. It is like striking a bell again and again, until the vibration penetrates the walls and passes through the air. Each repetition of that one phrase creates a resonance in the subconscious. And that resonance is what begins to move external circumstances. Reality becomes a mirror answering the same tone you are holding inside. Florence would recount how many students came to her desperate, carrying notebooks full of scattered phrases copied from self-help books. They repeated everything without order or focus, like an archer firing arrows in opposite directions simultaneously. The result was confusion, exhaustion, and above all frustration, because nothing changed. She would stop them and say, "The universe responds to a clear command, not to a scattered murmur." From this came the idea of choosing one single phrase. But not just any phrase. It had to be a declaration that concentrated every element of spiritual law, identity in the present tense, harmony with divine law, breadth wide enough to cover every area of life, and a closing under grace that ensures what is received arrives without struggle or harm. When she introduced the central declaration, Florence asked her disciples not to recite it like parrots, but to let it resonate inside them like a tuning fork, marking the rhythm of the day. She would say the secret was not in how many times it was repeated, but in the quality of resonance it left in the consciousness. One phrase felt deeply and repeated with consistency is worth more than 100 scattered words. In this way, life begins to align with that single frequency. The way crystal glasses vibrate in unison when a single note rings out, the universe begins to answer in coherence with your central declaration. Repetition creates resonance. Resonance produces results. This is the moment the technique Florence transmitted comes into focus. The art of holding one phrase as the tuning fork of your life. If you have ever tried repeating affirmations, and after a few days felt frustrated because nothing changed, you are not alone. Millions of people have walked through that exact experience. They open a book, find positive phrases, repeat them quietly for a week, and then quit, convinced it was self-deception. But Florence Scovel Shinn already warned us in 1925. Most people fail with affirmations because they say them too rarely, without conviction, and without repetition. A seed that barely touches the soil, never watered, never tended, cannot possibly germinate. The subconscious, Florence taught, is like fertile ground. It does not distinguish between wheat and weeds, between noble seeds and damaging ones. It simply grows whatever it receives. If every day of your life you repeat phrases like, "I never have enough," "Life is hard," "It is never enough," then that inner field is being sown with thorns. The field does not question whether those seeds are good or bad. It only does its job, it makes them grow. And then you wonder why your life fills with problems, debt, and lack. The answer was always in what you were planting without realizing it. Now, when someone discovers positive affirmations, they usually make the mistake of treating them like an occasional painkiller. They say the phrase once a day, perhaps in front of the mirror each morning, and expect everything to shift. But Florence insisted the subconscious is not impressed by isolated words. It responds to constant repetition and sustained vibration. Just as a farmer does not water the field once and expect the harvest, but each day, without fail, moistens the soil, protects the plants, and tends the process. Constancy is what converts the seed into fruit. Here is the real difference between those who merely try and those who actually transform their lives. The one who tries speaks a phrase once, sees no immediate result and gives up. The one who transforms understands that the subconscious needs hourly repetition, small, continuous doses, like drops of water that slowly carve channels into the hardest rock. Florence called this the rhythm of the word. Not a single shout, but a sustained beat. Like someone striking a drum and holding the vibration, alive throughout every corner of the room. And this is exactly where hourly practice enters. Florence taught that every 60 minutes, the mind has a window where it can be redirected. If you seize those moments to plant the right phrase, your subconscious receives a clear, consistent instruction. Instead of letting the day flood with complaints, criticism, and scattered thoughts, you use the hourly declaration as a reset button. Each time you say it, you clear the field, pull the weeds, and replant the seed of abundance. Most affirmations fail because they are sporadic and shallow. They are spoken from the conscious mind, without reaching emotion, without piercing the filter of doubt. But the hourly declaration has a different quality. By repeating at short intervals, it drills through the layers of mental resistance until it reaches the fertile soil of the subconscious, like a hammer striking gently, again and again, until the wall gives way. Not brute force, constancy. Florence recounted how many of her students were astonished to realize that at the start, they did not even believe what they were saying. They felt ridiculous repeating, "I now receive abundance," while their purse sat empty. But she asked them to persist, because the subconscious does not need your absolute faith from day one. It needs your constancy. With every hourly repetition, the phrase takes root deeper. And there comes a moment when conviction is born on its own, because the ground has been worked long enough to sustain the new belief. Think of a simple example. A complaining person who repeats daily, "Everything goes wrong for me," rarely notices they are already affirming something. Their life is the proof that words carry power. Only they are directing it against themselves. The subconscious has answered faithfully, multiplying the stumbles and the losses. The difference in Florence's method is not whether you affirm or not. It is what you affirm, how often, and with what conviction. The hourly declaration functions like the switch that turns the light back on when doubt or fear cuts the power. It works like the farmer who waters the plants even when the sky is still clear, trusting that the seed is already working in the invisible. And above all, it works as spiritual discipline, a way of reminding your mind who you are and what command you are giving the universe. Florence said that words are not empty charms. They are vibration codes. Speak them once and they barely graze the surface. Speak them every hour and the vibration becomes a habit, and the habit becomes identity. At that point you no longer struggle against doubt, because your own subconscious now works in your favor, repeating the decree even in your automatic thoughts. So when someone tells you affirmations do not work, remember what Florence taught. It is not that they do not work. It is that they were used incorrectly. It is like blaming the seed for never germinating when it was never watered. The secret is frequency and conviction, and hourly practice brings both together in one simple, powerful method. Every hour is a chance to reset. Every hourly declaration pulls the weed of doubt and plants a fresh certainty. The difference between the one who stays stuck and the one who moves forward is not the volume of physical effort. It is the quality of the word sound continuously. The secret has always been in plain sight. The subconscious does not argue. It simply obeys what you repeat with persistence. Sow complaint, and lack will grow. Sow decrees, and abundance will bloom. And the most practical tool Florence Scovel Shinn left us is exactly this: the hourly declaration as the reset button of your destiny. Florence Scovel Shinn did not teach hollow phrases or pretty words to lift the mood. What she transmitted was a spiritual art of precision. She would say that a well-formed decree carries the same force as a master key, one that opens the locked door of your destiny. But like every key, it must be cut with exactness. If one tooth is missing, the lock will not turn. The same is true of your words. Every element matters. The first of those elements is identity. Florence repeated that every decree must begin at the root of I am. Not I want, not I need, not someday I will have. The universe responds to I am because it recognizes in that declaration your nature as a creator. When you say I am abundant, you are not describing a wish. You are proclaiming an identity. An identity carries a weight that no petition can match. To say I will be is to project into a future that never arrives. To say I am is to claim in the present what already exists on the invisible plane. The second element is the present tense. Florence warned her students that affirmations spoken in the future are like a train that never reaches the station. I am going to have, someday I will have, I am waiting. These phrases push the manifestation perpetually forward, never allowing it to settle in your now. The subconscious interprets those words as an instruction to keep the promise always distant. That is why she insisted on speaking as if the blessing were already here. It is not self-deception. It is a way of aligning with the invisible reality already pulsing in the spirit. When you speak in the present, your mind and body prepare to receive, not to wait. The third element is the language of alignment. Florence taught that words carry a vibratory tone. Some words crash against reality like someone pushing on a locked door. Others flow like water finding its natural course. To say harmony, flow, divine order, this is not poetic decoration. It is orienting the phrase toward cooperation with universal intelligence. One who fights with their words fights with life. One who aligns with them finds that circumstances move on their own. Florence spoke of life as a river. If you row against the current, you exhaust yourself. But if you align your boat with the flow, you advance without effort. Your decrees need that music. Words that harmonize rather than resist. The fourth element is the closing in grace. For Florence, grace was the piece that crowned every decree. Because it acknowledged that the universe has pathways your logic could never design. You can calculate income, plan strategies, seek solutions, but grace opens an unexpected door, a shortcut your mind did not foresee. When you close by saying, under grace and in a perfect way, you hand control to a higher power that sees far beyond your limited vision. This is not passivity, it is spiritual intelligence. You allow life to work in your favor through means that transcend your understanding. This is the anatomy of a powerful decree: identity that proclaims, present tense that activates, language that aligns, grace that opens the way. Four simple but decisive elements. When one is missing, the decree weakens. When all four are present, it becomes a vibratory command reality cannot ignore. Florence summarized it clearly. The word is your magic wand. But a wand does not act on its own. It is the precision with which it moves that awakens the power. Your decrees are exactly that, wands of vibration. Spoken with identity in the present, with harmony, and under grace. They carry the force to reorganize matter itself. Florence Scovel Shinn did not believe in accumulating dozens of scattered phrases. She said the mind needs one single, clear key, precisely cut to fit the lock of the subconscious and swing open the door to the infinite. That key is a decree that condenses, in a handful of words, the full force of spiritual law. Today you receive it. It is simple, but it is charged with a power that only activates when it is understood and spoken with complete conviction. The phrase is this: I am in perfect harmony with infinite abundance, and all good things now flow to me under grace and in miraculous ways. Every word was chosen to vibrate in resonance with divine intelligence. This is not poetic decoration. It is a code that commands reality. Let us break it open so you understand its full reach. I am. The decree begins in the present, because the universe does not recognize the future as a promise. When you say I will be, or someday, your subconscious interprets it as eternal postponement. I am is identity. It is the affirmation of what you already are. Here, right now. Florence taught that every true change begins when your voice stops speaking of wishes and starts speaking of spiritual facts. In perfect harmony, This is not about forcing. It is about aligning. Harmony means order without friction. The certainty that there is no clash between what you desire and what life can offer you. To be in harmony is like tuning an instrument. When the string holds the right tone, the entire performance flows effortlessly, with infinite abundance. Here, every idea of limit is denied. Infinite abundance means that good does not run out, that you compete with no one, that scarcity does not exist in the divine mind. Florence repeated that abundance is like air. No one fears that another person breathes too much and leaves less for themselves. Abundance is an inexhaustible ocean. And this decree reminds you there is always more than enough. And all good things, not only money, not only opportunities, not only health, all good things is an integral decree that covers every dimension of life. What arrives under this seal carries no hidden loss or sacrifice. It is fullness, healthy relationships, mental peace, prosperity, vitality, creativity, purpose. Now flow to me. Here the code commands movement. This is not static or distant. It is flow, continuous current, without delay. Now breaks the idea of indefinite waiting. It declares that good is already moving in your direction, and your role is to open your hands and receive. Under grace. This is the clause that changes everything. Under grace means without struggle, without violence, without sacrificing your peace or your integrity. It means the path will be opened by superior intelligence, in a way that is just and perfect. This prevents the error of receiving something through forced means that later becomes a burden. Grace ensures what is received is yours by divine right and will carry no negative consequence. And in miraculous ways. This is the surrender of logic. Florence insisted it is not your task to decide how it will happen, because the human mind is limited. Miraculous does not mean impossible. It means unexpected, beyond calculation. It is opening the door so that life surprises you with paths you would never have imagined. When you unite every one of these parts, the decree becomes a spiritual tuning fork. It tunes your consciousness to divine order and emits a clear, sustained vibration that life cannot ignore. Speaking it every hour is like striking that tuning fork again and again. The resonance expands, touching your mind, your body, your decisions, and finally, your circumstances. Florence said that, in repeating this phrase, you are not only affirming a truth, you are reminding the universe of your frequency. Every hour is a fresh strike of the hammer engraving the decree into the stone of the subconscious. First you feel it inside. Then you see it outside, and when the day arrives that you no longer doubt, reality adjusts itself to obey. Florence Scovel Shinn did not see the power of the word as an isolated trick. She saw it as a rhythm. She taught that every day is an open field, and what you sow in the morning determines what you will see blooming in the afternoon, and what will ripen by night. That is why she insisted the declaration must not be spoken once, but every hour, like the steady watering that keeps a plant alive. Morning is the sowing of intention. At waking, your mind still rests in that soft state where the conscious and the unconscious brush against each other. There, every word penetrates more deeply, like fresh seed falling into fertile soil. Florence asked her students not to let the day ambush them at once with worries, but to set their course with the first declaration. It is the equivalent of planting the seed of success before the external noise has any chance to install doubt. Afternoon is the sustaining against the challenges. This is the part of the day when problems surface, when external demands try to steal your focus and your faith. Here is where constancy makes all the difference. The one who stops declaring at midday is like the farmer who plants in the morning, and then abandons the field to the sun. The soil dries. The shoots wither. But the one who repeats the phrase every hour is watering the seed again and again, shielding it from the drought of doubt and the weeds of fear. Florence affirmed that the word repeated with constant faith becomes an invisible shield, capable of maintaining inner order, even when everything outside appears to be chaos. Night is subconscious integration. Just before sleep, the final thought becomes the program for the mind that will remain active while you rest. The decree spoken in that moment is like a final seal, instructing the subconscious to work through the entire night in the direction you have chosen. It is like leaving a guardian on duty who continues cultivating and organizing while your body rests. Florence expressed it with a decisive phrase: what you repeat with faith becomes flesh. That is, the invisible condenses. It materializes, takes concrete form in experience. The metaphor of the seed summarizes everything. A seed does not germinate by receiving a river in a single day. It germinates through the steady watering that keeps it alive until it breaks through. The word works the same way. One single declaration may move you for an instant, but the hourly habit generates vibratory accumulation. Each hour of repetition adds another layer of certainty, until the sum of those layers becomes unbreakable. And when faith reaches critical mass, manifestation becomes inevitable. Florence taught that success does not arrive from one isolated act of force. These are the teachings of Florence Scovel Shinn, a woman who understood, long before modern science confirmed it, that your spoken word is the architect of your lived reality. If this message opens something in you today, carry it forward. Speak the decree. Write it down. Repeat it every hour, and watch your field begin to change. If this channel has served you, consider subscribing to Scovel Spirit Daily, where Florence Scovel Shinn's timeless wisdom is shared week after week to help you walk in abundance, faith, and divine alignment. And leave a comment below. Tell us which part of today's teaching struck you most deeply. Your words carry power, even in the comment section. Until next time, keep speaking your truth.